Coal's share in power generation remains dominant at 35%. Natural gas is at 24%. Energy-related carbon emissions were up 0.8%, reaching a new high of 39 billion tons of CO2. That stuff that heats the planet, we just keep pumping it into our atmosphere and our oceans. I can't begin to describe how frustrating it is to hear that carbon emissions are up 0.8%. You think that that's maybe not a big deal until you hear that we're supposed to cut it by 50%. So we are going in the wrong direction. It may seem menial, but it is completely the wrong thing that we should be shooting for right now. All of our efforts, we talked about during Antoine's part of the show, what we're doing is coming up with ways to cope with the coming storm, which are bad in itself. I mean, they are not good coping mechanisms. We are not giving ourselves crutches. We're giving ourselves toothpicks to walk on at this point. But we're supposed to come up with stuff to mitigate, to stop the flow of carbon emissions, to stop climate change from getting worse. By 50%, we're supposed to cut. And all these efforts, these amorphic, ambiguous efforts that we're supposed to put in, we're up almost 1%. We're in the wrong direction by 1%. You would want that number to go down. If it went down by 10%, you'd be like, still not good enough. This is infuriating. But it went in the opposite direction. I cannot tell you how frustrating that is to hear. Now, global wind and solar power grew to a record share of 12%, whoop-de-doo, of power generation last year, surpassing nuclear. But it's still a far cry because we need to cut by 50%. That 12%, you may say 12% is something. Is it? Is it? Because we just added 0.8% to carbon emissions. So it did not help cut it.
You know, it's so funny really because you will hear that though. You will hear that from essentially not capitulators. What do you call people who are collaborators? You at this point you might as well start using these terms. You might as well, because if you're with fossil fuel at this point, you're a collaborator. So
loyalist,
yeah, loyalist. Sure, why not? Yeah, sure. Yeah, you will hear that. You'll hear them tout these things to say, we're up, we're at 12% now and we're making massive gains. They'll say like it was in 1986 we were at 1 to 2 and it's like now we're at 12 and it's like fantastic. But like you're saying, it doesn't count if the other side is also making gains. Your percentage, the work you're doing is null if the opposition or if the counter position is also making incredible gains and incredible profits to the point where it's like you will obviously be operating at a deficit or at a slower pace, because who wants to knock into those profits? Who wants to take back any of the profits that are being made on the fossil fuel industry side when you can use it? I mean, when you can make yourself wealthy off of it, right? I mean, that's where it always comes down to. It just always comes down to, no matter what you do in renewables, the fossil fuel industry just has more money, more power, more influence. And it's not any surprise that they are continuing to grow, despite the fact that we are trying to go the opposite direction in name only.
It's just insulting. I mean, it's insulting to hear that renewables have grown to 12% and surpassed nuclear energy, but then we went in the opposite direction in carbon emissions. Like, it's insulting to tell me that, knowing what our goal is and what we're supposed to hit. So, what's the output that we're looking for? That's what we should be focusing on. I don't care about what the percentages are and breakouts of energy, because honestly, it doesn't really matter what they are in themselves. If you were to tell me it's 60%, it's 20%, it's 12%, it's meaningless to me, because that in itself is not the pat on the back. The pat on the back is we cut carbon emissions by 50%. So tell me that. And then if someone's curious, you can be like, hey, how did we do that? How did we cut it by 50%? Oh, we raised renewables to 65% and that did the trick. Oh, that's cool. But don't tell me the percentage of renewables if we're going in the opposite direction of carbon emission cutting. I don't care about that. There's no benchmark in that percentage by itself, in that 12%, to tell me whether or not I should be happy. You want me to be happy? Tell me how much we've cut carbon emissions. Oh, we added 0.8%? Yeah, that 12% sucks. Anyway. Ugh. Anyway, so